The fluorescent lights of the convenience store buzzed above me like angry wasps, casting everything in that sickly yellow glow that made my exhaustion feel heavier. I stood in the feminine products aisle at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, staring at the rows of pregnancy tests as if they might spontaneously combust if I looked hard enough. My hands trembled as I reached for the cheapest box, the store brand with its clinical white packaging that promised results in 3 minutes. 3 minutes to confirm what my body had been screaming at me for weeks. The nausea, the tender breasts, the exhaustion that felt like I was wading through concrete every morning. And the missed period that I'd tried to convince myself was just stress from the divorce. Marcus had signed the papers 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks since he'd looked at me across our kitchen table, the one we'd picked out together at that antique market in Brooklyn, and told me he was leaving, that she was back. Jennifer. His first love. The woman he'd dated in college before we met. The ghost that had haunted our entire marriage without me even knowing she existed as a threat. I never stopped loving her, he'd said, his voice so calm it made my chest feel like it was caving in. She contacted me 3 months ago. We've been talking. I'm sorry, but I can't pretend anymore. 3 months. He'd been planning his exit for 3 months, while I'd been planning our 5th anniversary trip to Italy. I clutched the pregnancy test box to my chest, the sharp corners digging into my palms through my threadbare coat, the same coat I'd been wearing since college because I'd spent our money on making our apartment a home while Marcus spent it on, apparently, rekindling old flames. The cashier barely looked at me as she scanned the test. Young, maybe 19, with purple streaks in her hair and earbuds dangling from her neck. She probably saw hundreds of women like me every week, desperate, alone, buying answers they were terrified to receive. $14.95, she mumbled. I handed her a 20, one of the last bills from my rapidly diminishing savings, and shoved the test into my purse before the receipt finished printing. The bell above the door chimed as I pushed out into the November cold, the wind immediately cutting through my inadequate coat and making my eyes water. Or maybe that was just me finally letting myself cry. The streets of Lower Manhattan were quieter than usual, the post-theater crowds long gone. My studio apartment was 12 blocks away, but I couldn't bring myself to go home yet. Home was where I'd have to take the test, where I'd have to face the reality that I might be carrying the child of a man who'd thrown me away like I was nothing. My feet carried me toward Washington Square Park, almost on autopilot. Stupid, maybe, to walk through a park alone at midnight, but some part of me didn't care anymore. What else could the universe possibly do to me? The park was nearly empty, just a few scattered individuals on benches, and the distant sound of someone playing guitar. I found my usual bench, the one facing the fountain, where I'd been coming every night since Marcus left, because my apartment felt like a mausoleum of our failed marriage. I sat down heavily, the cold metal seeping through my jeans. My breath misted in front of me as I pulled out the pregnancy test box, turning it over in my hands. The instructions felt like they were written in a foreign language, even though I'd probably read them 17 times in the store. You're going to freeze to death out here. The voice came from behind me, deep and smooth like aged whiskey. I jumped, nearly dropping the box, and twisted around to find a man standing a few feet away. My heart hammered against my ribs, not just from being startled, but from the sheer presence he commanded. He was younger than I expected from that voice, maybe early 30s, and beautiful in a way that felt dangerous. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, sharp cheekbones and a jaw that looked like it could cut glass. But it was his eyes that made my breath catch. Dark, almost black in the streetlight, and fixed on me with an intensity that made me feel like he could see straight through to my bones. He wore a black wool coat that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, tailored perfectly to broad shoulders. No gloves despite the cold, and when he moved closer, I caught the scent of something expensive. Cedar and bergamot, and something else I couldn't name, but that made my pulse quicken. I'm fine, I managed, my voice coming out smaller than I intended. I clutched the pregnancy test box tighter, trying to hide it against my stomach. His eyes flicked down to my hands, and I saw the moment he registered what I was holding. Something shifted in his expression. Not judgment exactly, but a sharpening of interest that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Are you? He moved around the bench with a fluid grace that reminded me of a predator. Not threatening exactly, but absolutely certain of his place in the world. You've been sitting on this bench every night for 2 weeks. Same time. Same lost expression. My mouth went dry. He'd been watching me? I haven't noticed you, I said, hating how my voice shook. You weren't supposed to. He sat down on the opposite end of the bench, not close enough to touch, but near enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. Or maybe that was just my imagination. You always sit here for exactly 47 minutes, then walk home, alone, in the dark, through streets that aren't safe for a woman by herself. Are you threatening me? The words came out sharper than I felt, some distant part of my survival instinct finally kicking in. No. He turned to face me fully, and the streetlight caught his features in a way that made him look almost otherworldly. I'm telling you that you're not invisible, even when you feel like you are. Something in those words cracked open a place in my chest I'd been trying to keep sealed. How did he know? How could this stranger possibly know that invisibility was exactly what I'd been feeling, like Marcus had erased me when he left? Like I was just a placeholder in my own life. I don't know what you want from me, I whispered. Nothing. He paused, and a slight smile curved his lips. The kind of smile that probably made most people very nervous, yet. Before I could respond, headlights swept across the park. A black SUV pulled up to the curb, sleek and expensive-looking with tinted windows. The back door opened, and a man in a dark suit stepped out, clearly a driver or bodyguard, built like a brick wall and scanning the park with the kind of alertness that screamed professional security. The man beside me stood in one fluid movement. You should go home. Take the test. Whatever the result is, you deserve better than sitting alone in the cold, punishing yourself for someone else's failure. You don't know anything about me, I said, but it came out weak. I know you've lost weight you couldn't afford to lose. I know you haven't bought yourself anything new in months. That coat is at least 5 years old. I know you work at the Italian restaurant on Sullivan Street because you smell like garlic and basil every night, and you're always counting tips in your purse before you sit down. He tilted his head, studying me with those unsettling dark eyes. I know you're stronger than you think you are, even if you don't believe it yet. My throat felt tight. Why do you care? For a moment, something almost vulnerable flickered across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by that mask of controlled power. Because I recognized that look, and because some things shouldn't be faced alone. He turned to walk toward the waiting SUV, and I found myself speaking before I could stop myself. Wait, what's your name? He paused, glancing back over his shoulder. The light caught the sharp planes of his face, making him look like something out of a Renaissance painting. Dark, powerful, untouchable. Dante, he said. Then, after a beat, and you're Elena. You wear a name tag at work. He slid into the SUV before I could respond, and it pulled away into the night, leaving me alone on the bench with my pregnancy test and a head full of questions. I sat there for another 10 minutes, trying to process what had just happened. A stranger had been watching me for 2 weeks, knew my routine, knew details about my life that should have terrified me. But instead of fear, all I felt was a strange, electric awareness, like I'd just been seen for the first time in months. Finally, the cold drove me home. My studio apartment greeted me with its familiar emptiness, the Murphy bed I'd pulled down that morning still unmade, the kitchenette with its single plate and cup drying by the sink, the framed photos of Marcus and me that I'd finally turned face down last week. I went straight to the bathroom, that tiny space with its cracked tile and mirror that had seen too many of my tears. My hands shook as I opened the pregnancy test box, as I read the instructions one more time, as I did what needed to be done. Then I set the stick on the edge of the sink and watched the little window, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. One line appeared immediately. Then, after what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 30 seconds, a second line bloomed into existence beside it, positive. I was pregnant with Marcus's baby. The man who'd left me for his first love was going to be a father, and he had no idea. I sank down onto the closed toilet seat, the test still clutched in my hand, and let the reality wash over me. Alone, broke. Working doubles at a restaurant where the tips barely covered rent, and now pregnant. But as I sat there in my tiny bathroom at 1 a.m, another thought crept in. unbidden and unwelcome and absolutely ridiculous. Dark eyes watching me from across a park. A voice like whiskey telling me I was stronger than I thought, the scent of cedar and bergamot and danger. Dante. I shook my head, trying to clear it. The last thing I needed was to start fantasizing about mysterious strangers who watched me from the shadows. I needed to figure out what I was going to do about the very real pregnancy test in my hands. But as I finally stood up and looked at myself in the mirror, really looked, at my hollow cheeks and exhausted eyes and the hand pressed protectively against my still flat stomach, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life had just tilted on its axis. And something told me it had nothing to do with the test results and everything to do with the man in the black SUV. I called in sick to work the next day. Angela, my manager at Marcello's, didn't sound pleased. Wednesday lunch shifts were always busy, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I'd spent the entire night staring at the ceiling, the positive pregnancy test sitting on my nightstand like an accusation. By the time weak November sunlight filtered through my single window, I'd made exactly 0 decisions about anything. The knock on my door at 9:30 made me jump so hard I spilled the chamomile tea I'd been nursing. I wasn't expecting anyone. The mailman never came this early, and I'd successfully avoided everyone I knew since the divorce. I shuffled to the door in my oversized sleep shirt, one of Marcus's old college shirts that I should have thrown away but couldn't quite bring myself to, and peered through the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway, tall, elegant, probably in her 40s, wearing a charcoal gray suit that screamed money and power. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, and she held a large shopping bag with handles that looked like they came from somewhere obscenely expensive. Elena Rodriguez? Her voice carried through the door, accented, but I couldn't place from where. European, maybe. I have a delivery for you. I didn't order anything, I called back, my hand on the deadbolt but not opening it. It's from Mr. Salvatore. He insisted it be delivered this morning. My heart stuttered. Salvatore. Not Dante. He'd only given me his first name, but somehow I knew it was him, had to be. Against every instinct that screamed this was insane, I opened the door. The woman's expression remained professional, but I saw her eyes flick over my ratty shirt and bare feet, taking in the disaster I currently presented. To her credit, her face showed nothing but polite courtesy. May I come in? This will only take a moment. I stepped back, letting her enter my shoebox of an apartment. She didn't comment on the size or the threadbare furniture or the general air of depression that probably clung to everything. She simply set the shopping bag on my small table and pulled out a box. Not just any box. A coat box from Burberry. Mr. Salvatore noticed you seemed cold last night, she said, opening it to reveal the most beautiful coat I'd ever seen. Cashmere, in a deep charcoal gray that would go with everything. Classic cut. The kind that would last years, the kind I could never afford in a million years. I can't accept this. The words came automatically, even as my fingers itched to touch the fabric. He anticipated you might say that. She pulled out an envelope, handing it to me. He asked me to give you this. The envelope was heavy stock, cream-colored, with my name written in bold masculine handwriting across the front. I opened it with trembling fingers. Elena, consider it a loan if it makes you feel better. Nobody should freeze while making decisions that will change their life. The car will pick you up at 8 p.m. tonight. Wear something comfortable. We need to talk. D. The car? I looked up at the woman, who was already pulling more items from the bag. A bottle of prenatal vitamins. A gift certificate to a grocery store I actually shopped at, loaded with $500. And a business card with a single phone number embossed in black. Mr. Salvatore will send a car for you this evening, she confirmed, setting everything on my table with practiced efficiency. The driver will wait as long as necessary, but he hopes you'll accept. I don't even know who he is. My voice came out smaller than I intended. For the first time, something that might have been sympathy crossed her face. Mr. Salvatore is someone who doesn't make offers lightly. Whatever his interest in you, I can promise it's genuine. He doesn't play games with people he considers under his protection. His protection? I'm not... We just met last night. He doesn't owe me anything. Nevertheless. She moved toward the door, her heels clicking on my cheap linoleum. The car will be here at 8. What you do with that information is entirely your choice, Miss Rodriguez." She left before I could form another protest, the door clicking shut with a finality that felt significant. I stood in my apartment, staring at the coat box and the vitamins and the gift certificate, my mind spinning. This was insane. You don't accept expensive gifts from strangers. You don't get in cars with men you don't know, no matter how intense their eyes or how much they claim to understand your pain. But as I lifted the coat from its box, feeling the weight of the cashmere in my hands, breathing in that scent of newness and quality, something in me cracked. When was the last time someone had noticed I was cold? When had Marcus ever paid attention to details like my threadbare coat, or the weight I'd lost, or the sadness I carried like a second skin? I hung the coat in my closet, telling myself I'd return it. Then I made myself eat something. Crackers and ginger ale, the only things that didn't make my stomach revolt. I took one of the prenatal vitamins. I sat on my bed and stared at that business card for an hour. At 7:30, I was standing in front of my closet, trying to figure out what something comfortable meant when you were meeting a mysterious stranger who'd been watching you and apparently had enough money to casually drop a $1,000 coat on someone he'd spoken to for 5 minutes. I settled on my only pair of dark jeans that still fit and a soft navy sweater that didn't have any stains. The new coat went on last, and I couldn't help but notice how it transformed everything. Suddenly, I didn't look quite so much like a woman falling apart. The knock came at exactly 8 o'clock. The same brick wall of a man from last night stood in my hallway, but this time I could see him clearly. Mid-40s, with a scar running through his left eyebrow and eyes that had seen things most people couldn't imagine. He wore a black suit that barely contained his frame, and when he spoke, his voice was gravel and concrete. "Miss Rodriguez, I'm Tony. I'll be driving you this evening." "Where are we going?" I asked, not moving from my doorway. "Mr. Salvatore has a table reserved at his restaurant. He thought you might be more comfortable somewhere public for your first real conversation." Something about that eased a fraction of my anxiety. Public meant safe. Public meant I could leave if things got weird. "Okay," I heard myself say. "Let me just grab my purse." The SUV was even more impressive up close. The interior smelled like leather and something else. Gun oil, maybe, though I wouldn't know why I thought that. Tony opened the back door for me, and I slid into seats that probably cost more than my monthly rent. We drove through Manhattan in silence. I watched the city blur past the tinted windows, my hands twisted in my lap. The new coat felt like armor, or maybe a costume for whatever role I was about to play. We pulled up in front of a restaurant in Tribeca that I'd walked past 100 times but never dreamed of entering. Giardino Nero, the Black Garden. No sign outside, just a simple bronze plaque beside a heavy wooden door, the kind of place where you needed a reservation months in advance and a bank account with several zeros. Tony opened my door, and suddenly Dante was there, emerging from the restaurant's entrance like he'd been waiting. He wore all black tonight, slacks and a fitted shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, revealing tanned skin and what looked like the edge of a tattoo on his left wrist. His hair was slightly disheveled, like he'd run his hands through it, and those dark eyes locked onto me with an intensity that made my breath catch. Elena. My name on his lips sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. "Thank you for coming." "I'm not sure I had much choice," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "Your assistant was very persuasive." A slight smile curved his mouth. "Maria has that effect, but you always had a choice. You could have thrown everything in the trash and ignored the car." "The vitamins were a nice touch," I admitted. "How did you know?" "The same way I knew about the coat and the weight loss." He offered me his arm, a surprisingly old-fashioned gesture. "I pay attention." I hesitated only a moment before taking it. His arm was solid beneath my hand, radiating warmth through the expensive fabric of his shirt. He led me into the restaurant, and I tried not to gape. The interior was stunning, dark wood and soft lighting, with actual olive trees growing in massive planters throughout the space. White tablecloths and crystal glasses, and the kind of quiet elegance that made me acutely aware of my Target jeans and secondhand sweater. But Dante didn't seem to notice or care. He guided me past the hostess stand. The woman behind it immediately straightened when she saw him, murmuring, "Mr. Salvatore," with something that looked like reverence and fear. and toward a private section at the back. Our table was tucked into an alcove, separated from the main dining room by a wall of glass and trailing ivy, private but visible, intimate but safe. Another man stood nearby, younger than Tony but with the same alert awareness. Security, I realized. Dante had security watching while we ate. Is this necessary? I gestured vaguely to the guard. Always. He pulled out my chair, waiting until I sat before taking his own seat across from me. I don't take chances with things that matter. I'm not a thing that matters. You don't even know me, don't I? He leaned back, studying me with those unsettling eyes. Elena Rodriguez, 27 years old, divorced 6 weeks ago from Marcus Chen, who left you for his college girlfriend. You work at Marcello's, usually the lunch and dinner shifts, and you send money every month to your mother in Phoenix. You have an English literature degree from NYU that you've never used because you got married instead. You read on your breaks, literary fiction usually, nothing commercial. And you've been sitting on that bench in Washington Square every night trying to figure out who you are without him. My heart hammered against my ribs. You can't just investigate people. I can do anything I want. No arrogance in his tone, just simple fact. But I didn't investigate you, Elena. I watched you. There's a difference. That's not better. That's actually worse. Maybe. He signaled a waiter who appeared instantly. But I'm not going to apologize for noticing you when everyone else in your life has made you feel invisible. The waiter poured water and disappeared before I could process that statement. Before I could figure out how this stranger had managed to put his finger exactly on the wound Marcus had left. Why? The question came out raw. Why notice me? Why the coat and the vitamins in this? I gestured to the restaurant. What do you want? Dante was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming once against the white tablecloth. Then he leaned forward, his eyes never leaving mine. 6 months ago, my younger sister died in childbirth. The baby survived. My nephew, Antonio, but Sophia didn't make it. His voice remained steady, but I saw something flicker in those dark eyes. Pain, carefully controlled. The father ran the moment he found out she was pregnant. Disappeared before we could make him take responsibility. My throat went tight. I'm so sorry. We found him eventually. Something cold entered his expression. He learned that you don't abandon a Salvatore and walk away unscathed. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. The way he said it, so matter of fact, made it clear that whatever happened to that man hadn't been pleasant. Last night I saw you sitting alone with a pregnancy test, looking like the world had ended, he continued. And all I could think was that somewhere, there's a man who did this to you and walked away. Just like the coward who abandoned my sister. Marcus didn't know, I said quickly. I only found out last night. Does that matter? He left you broke and alone. If you tell him about the baby, what do you think will happen? Will he come back? Support you? Or will he make you feel like even more of an inconvenience? I looked down at my hands, blinking back sudden tears because he was right. Marcus wouldn't come back. He'd probably offer to pay for an abortion and then go back to Jennifer. Relieved to have dodged a bullet. I haven't decided what I'm doing yet. I whispered, that's your choice. Only yours. Dante's voice softened slightly. But whatever you decide, you shouldn't have to face it alone. You shouldn't have to work yourself to exhaustion at a restaurant while you're dealing with morning sickness. You shouldn't have to worry about rent or food or prenatal care. You're offering to help me. It wasn't a question. I'm offering you protection. Why? Because of your sister? Partly. He paused, and something shifted in his expression, something almost vulnerable beneath all that controlled power. And partly because when I saw you on that bench, looking so lost and alone, something in me recognized something in you. Like calling to like. We're nothing alike, I protested. I gestured at him, at the restaurant, at the obvious wealth and power he commanded. And I'm nobody. You're someone who survived being thrown away by a person who should have cherished you. You're someone who gets up every morning and goes to work even when everything hurts. You're someone who's stronger than they know. His eyes held mine. That's not nobody, Elena. That's a survivor. The waiter returned then, setting down plates I didn't remember ordering. Fresh pasta with truffle oil, the scent making my stomach growl despite the nausea that had been my constant companion. "Eat," Dante said gently. "You need it." I picked up my fork, my hand still trembling slightly. "If I accept your help, and I'm not saying I am, what would that look like?" "An apartment. Somewhere safe, comfortable. Nothing you have to share with ghosts of your marriage. Medical care, the best doctors, whatever you need. Money so you can quit that restaurant job and actually rest. Security." He said that last word with particular weight. "Nobody will hurt you or make you feel small ever again. That's too much. I can't accept all that from a stranger. Then get to know me." The slight smile returned. "I'm not a complete stranger anymore, am I? You know my name. You know about my sister. You know I own this restaurant and several others. You know I have security because my business requires it." "What business?" I asked, though part of me wasn't sure I wanted to know. His smile widened slightly. "Import-export, family business, very lucrative, very demanding." It was a non-answer, and we both knew it. But something in his eyes told me that pushing for details right now would end this conversation. "I need time," I said instead. "To think. This is all. It's a lot." "Of course." He gestured to my plate. "For now, just eat. Let yourself have one evening where you're warm and fed and not alone. Everything else can wait." So I ate, and it was the best food I'd had in months. We talked about safer things, books we'd read, places we'd traveled, the neighborhood and how it had changed. He was surprisingly easy to talk to once we moved past the intensity of his initial offer. But I couldn't stop thinking about his words. Protection, security, someone who won't let you face this alone. When Tony drove me home 2 hours later, my head was spinning. Dante had walked me to the car, his hand resting briefly on my lower back, a touch that burned through the new coat and sweater and straight into my skin. "Think about it," he'd said. "But don't take too long. You're already too thin, and winter is only getting colder." Now I stood in my apartment, the coat still wrapped around me, staring at a business card with a single phone number. One call could change everything. One call could trap me in a situation I didn't understand with a man who might be dangerous. But as I pressed my hand against my stomach, feeling nothing yet, but knowing life was growing there, I couldn't shake the thought that maybe being trapped in a gilded cage was better than drowning alone in the dark. I lasted 3 days before I called the number. 3 days of dragging myself through double shifts at Marcello's, the smell of garlic bread making me so nauseous I had to keep running to the bathroom. 3 days of Angela giving me increasingly pointed looks, clearly aware something was wrong. 3 days of lying awake in my studio apartment, listening to my upstairs neighbors fight, and feeling my savings account dwindle with every passing hour. On Friday night, I came home to find an eviction notice taped to my door. Marcus had been paying half the rent before the divorce. I'd thought I could manage alone if I picked up extra shifts, but I'd been wrong. The landlord wanted 2 months back rent by the end of the week, or I was out. I sat on my bed, still unmade because what was the point, and stared at that business card until the numbers blurred. Then I picked up my phone and dialed before I could talk myself out of it. He answered on the second ring. "Elena." Not a question. Like he'd been waiting for my call, his phone programmed with my number even though I'd never given it to him. "I need help." The words tasted like ash in my mouth. "You were right. I can't do this alone." Silence on the other end, but I could hear him breathing. Then, "Where are you?" "Home. My apartment. I just got an eviction notice. Pack a bag. Essentials only. Tony will be there in 20 minutes. "Wait, I didn't mean..." 20 minutes, Elena. Anything you can't carry. We'll send someone for tomorrow." His voice was firm, but not unkind. "You're not spending another night in that place." He hung up before I could argue. I stood there for a moment, phone still pressed to my ear, wondering what I'd just done. Then the reality crashed over me. I'd just accepted help from a man I barely knew. A man with security guards and vague answers about his business. A man who'd been watching me from the shadows for weeks. But I was out of options. And something in Dante's voice when he talked about his sister, the pain beneath that controlled exterior, made me believe he understood what it felt like to be desperate. I packed quickly. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, the few books I couldn't bear to leave behind. The framed photo of my mother from before she got sick. Everything fit into 2 duffel bags in my backpack. A pathetic summary of 27 years of life. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, bags at my feet, when the knock came. Tony stood in the hallway, his expression carefully neutral as he took in the eviction notice still taped to my door. "Ready, Miss Rodriguez? Is this insane?" I asked him. "Be honest with me." Something that might have been sympathy flickered across his scarred face. "Mr. Salvatore doesn't make promises he doesn't keep. If he said he'll protect you, he will. With his life, if necessary. Why would he do that for someone he doesn't know?" "You'll have to ask him that yourself." Tony picked up my bags like they weighed nothing. "But I've worked for him for 8 years. I've never seen him take an interest in anyone the way he has with you." That should have been reassuring. Instead, it made my pulse quicken with something that felt dangerously close to anticipation. The drive took us deeper into Manhattan, toward neighborhoods I'd only ever walked through during the day, staring at buildings I'd never be able to afford. Tony pulled up in front of a sleek high-rise in the West Village, all glass and steel and doormen in uniforms. "This is where Dante lives?" I asked, staring up at the building. "One of his properties." Tony opened my door. "He keeps several residences for security reasons. This one is his favorite." The lobby was all marble and modern art, with a concierge desk manned by someone who clearly recognized Tony immediately. We bypassed the regular elevators for a private one in the back, one that required a key card to access. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse apartment. I stepped out into a space that could have fit my entire studio 6 times over. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. The lights of Manhattan spread out like fallen stars. Hardwood floors, minimalist furniture that was somehow both modern and comfortable, and art on the walls that might have been original pieces worth more than I'd make in a lifetime. Dante stood by the windows, his back to me, talking quietly into a phone. He wore dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and even from behind he radiated that same controlled power I'd noticed the first night. He ended the call as Tony set down my bags, turning to face me. Those dark eyes swept over me, taking in my exhaustion and rumpled work clothes, and something softened in his expression. "Thank you, Tony. That will be all for tonight." The bodyguard nodded and disappeared back into the elevator, leaving us alone. "This is too much," I said into the silence. "I can't. This is your home." "This is one of my homes," he corrected, moving toward me with that fluid grace. "And you're not staying here. I have an apartment ready for you 2 floors down." "I just wanted to talk before Tony took you there. 2 floors down. Still in this building. Still close enough that he could, what? Watch over me? Keep tabs on me? Why?" The question burst out of me. "You keep saying you want to help, that you'll protect me, but I don't understand why. What do you get out of this?" Dante stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could smell that scent of cedar and bergamot that clung to him. "What do I get? Peace of mind, knowing you're safe. The satisfaction of helping someone who deserves better than what life has given her. And maybe..." He paused, something almost uncertain crossing his face. "Maybe the chance to make up for the fact that I couldn't save my sister." "I'm not your sister." "No." His eyes held mine. "You're not." The way he said it, low and intense, made heat bloom in my chest. This was dangerous territory. Whatever was building between us, this awareness, this tension, felt like standing too close to a fire. "I'm pregnant with another man's baby," I said, needing to remind both of us of that fact. "I'm a mess. I'm broke. I'm beautiful." The word stopped me cold, strong, resilient. "Everything you don't see when you look in the mirror. You don't know me," I whispered, but it came out weak. "Then let me." He took another step closer, and I could feel the heat radiating from him. "Stay here. Let me help you. Get to know me. Figure out what you want to do about the pregnancy without worrying about rent or food or working yourself to exhaustion. And if I decide to keep it, the baby, then I'll make sure you both have everything you need. The best doctors, a nursery, support, whatever you want." "Why would you do that?" My voice cracked. Nobody does that. Nobody helps without wanting something in return. I want something, he admitted. His hand came up, fingers brushing my cheek so gently I almost gasped. I want to see you smile. Really smile, not that fake thing you give customers at the restaurant. I want to watch you stop looking over your shoulder, waiting for the next disaster. I want... He stopped himself, jaw tightening like he'd said too much. What? I breathed. I want you to feel safe. His thumb traced my cheekbone, and I realized I was trembling. Because when I look at you, Elena, I see someone who hasn't felt safe in a very long time, and that I can fix. I should have stepped back. Should have put distance between us, but I was so tired of being strong, of holding everything together alone. And the way he looked at me, like I mattered, like I was worth protecting, made something in my chest crack wide open. Okay, I heard myself say. But I have conditions. A slight smile curved his lips. Name them. I want to work. Maybe not at the restaurant, but something. I need purpose. Done. I'll find you something suitable. I want honesty. If I ask you a question, you answer it. No more vague non-answers about your business. His smile faded slightly. That one is more complicated. There are things I can't tell you, Elena. For your protection as much as mine. Then tell me what you can. But don't lie to me. I've had enough of lies. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. I'll never lie to you. I may not always be able to tell you everything. But what I do tell you will be the truth. And if I want to leave, if this doesn't work out, something dark flickered in his eyes. You're not a prisoner. You can walk away whenever you want. But the way he said it, tight and controlled, made me wonder if he really meant it. Or if once I stepped fully into his world, leaving would be as simple as he made it sound. Show me the apartment, I said instead of pushing further. Relief crossed his face. So quick I almost missed it. He offered his arm again, and I took it, letting him guide me back to the elevator. 2 floors down, another key card, another door opening into another beautiful space. Smaller than his penthouse, but still larger than anywhere I'd ever lived. 1 bedroom with an actual bed, a real bed with a padded headboard and crisp white linens, a kitchen with granite countertops and appliances that looked brand new. A living room with a couch that faced windows overlooking a small private terrace. The refrigerator is stocked, Dante said, watching me take it all in. There's a washer and dryer in the closet by the bathroom. Building has a gym and a pool on the ground floor. Though I'd prefer you use the one in my penthouse when you want to swim. Better security. I turned to face him. You're serious about the security thing? Always. No hesitation. My life requires certain precautions. Anyone associated with me needs the same level of protection. What kind of import-export business requires this much security? His jaw tightened. The kind that operates in gray areas. The kind that made my family wealthy but also made us enemies. Are you in danger? The question came out before I could stop it, and I was surprised by how much the answer mattered. Always, he repeated, but softer this time. But I've been in danger my whole life, Elena. I know how to handle it, and I know how to keep safe the people He stopped himself again. The people under my protection. I wanted to ask what he'd been about to say, but exhaustion was catching up to me, the adrenaline from the eviction notice, and the move finally wearing off. I should let you rest, Dante said, reading my expression. But there's one more thing. He pulled a phone from his pocket, not his phone. A new one, still in the box. This is for you. My number is already programmed in, Tony's number, Maria's number. If you need anything, day or night, you call. I have a phone. That phone is registered to your old address, on a plan you can barely afford. This one is secure, paid for, and untraceable. He pressed it into my hands. Humor me. I took it because arguing felt like too much effort. Thank you for all of this. I know I keep saying I don't understand why, but thank you. Get some sleep. He moved toward the door, then paused. Elena, I meant what I said. You're safe now. Nobody will hurt you here. Not your landlord, not your ex-husband, not anyone. The way he said it, with such absolute certainty, should have scared me. Instead, for the first time in months, I felt the tight knot in my chest start to loosen. After he left, I explored the apartment more thoroughly. The bedroom closet held clothes, my size, casual and comfortable. Nothing extravagant, but all new. The bathroom was stocked with toiletries, including more prenatal vitamins. On the kitchen counter sat a folder with information about 3 different OB-GYNs, all highly rated, all accepting new patients. He'd thought of everything. I should have felt trapped, overwhelmed, scared of this stranger who'd inserted himself into my life and was systematically removing every obstacle I faced. But as I finally crawled into that impossibly comfortable bed, wrapped in sheets that smelled like lavender and something expensive, all I felt was relief. And maybe, buried beneath the exhaustion and fear and uncertainty, something that felt dangerously like hope. I fell asleep wondering what I'd gotten myself into, and whether I'd just made the best decision of my life or the worst. I woke up to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and, for a disorienting moment, had no idea where I was. Then, it all came rushing back. The eviction notice, the phone call, Dante's penthouse, and his dark eyes promising protection. My phone, the new one, showed 9:47 a.m. and 3 missed messages. Dante. Good morning. Doctor's appointment scheduled for 2 p.m. if you're comfortable with that. Dr. Sarah Chen comes highly recommended. Dante. Maria will bring you lunch at noon. She'll also take you shopping for anything else you need. Dante. I have meetings all day, but call if you need anything. Tony is downstairs. I stared at the messages, something warm and uncomfortable twisting in my chest. He'd been up early, arranging my life, making sure I was cared for. It should have felt controlling. Instead, it felt like being seen. I texted back, "Thank you. I'll be ready at 2. His response came immediately. Tony will drive you. And Elena? Try to eat breakfast. You're still too thin. I set the phone down, pressing my hand against my still flat stomach. The nausea was already creeping in, that familiar morning wave that made everything smell wrong. But I forced myself to the kitchen anyway, finding the refrigerator stocked with things I actually liked. Ginger ale, plain crackers, fresh fruit, Greek yogurt. Someone had paid attention to what I could stomach. Maria arrived at exactly noon with shopping bags from 3 different boutiques. She swept into the apartment like an elegant storm, her heels clicking on the hardwood. "Mr. Salvatore thought you might need more clothes," she said, setting everything on the couch. I took the liberty of selecting items appropriate for the season. If anything doesn't fit or isn't to your taste, we'll exchange it. I opened the first bag to find jeans, sweaters, comfortable dresses. Nothing flashy, just quality basics and colors that would actually suit me. The second bag held undergarments, pajamas, and a soft robe. The third contained shoes, including a pair of sneakers I'd been eyeing at a store window for months, but couldn't justify buying. "This is too much," I said weakly. "Mr. Salvatore doesn't do things by halves." Maria's expression softened slightly. "He wants you comfortable. Let him do this." Over lunch, soup and bread that Maria had also brought, from some bakery that made everything taste like heaven. She told me more about Dante without me even asking. "I've worked for the Salvatore family for 15 years, she said, watching me eat with the same assessing look Dante sometimes wore. First for his father, now for him. He's not like his father was. Dante is harder in some ways, but also more careful, more controlled. What happened to his father? Heart attack. 5 years ago. Dante took over the business at 27. Some people doubted he could handle it. A small smile. They don't doubt anymore. And his mother? Died when he was 12. Cancer. It's just him and his nephew now after Sophia." She stopped, a flash of genuine pain crossing her face. She was a sweet girl, too trusting. The man who got her pregnant was, well, he won't be a problem anymore. The way she said it made ice slide down my spine. What did Dante do to him? Maria's eyes met mine, suddenly hard. Nothing the man didn't deserve. You don't abandon a pregnant woman, especially not a Salvatore. There are consequences for that kind of betrayal. I set down my spoon, my appetite suddenly gone. I need to know what kind of man I've accepted help from, what kind of business Dante really runs. Why? Will it change anything? You're already here, already under his protection, and you have nowhere else to go. It was harsh but true, and we both knew it. I deserve the truth, I said quietly. Maria studied me for a long moment, then sighed. The Salvatore family has been in New York for 4 generations. They started with legitimate businesses, restaurants, real estate, construction. But over time, they expanded into other areas. Import-export is accurate, but it's not wine and olive oil they're moving. It's, let's call it insurance and protection services, helping people who can't go through traditional channels. I couldn't quite say it. He's powerful. He's dangerous to his enemies. But he's also a man of honor, in his own way. He protects what's his. She leaned forward. And whether you realize it yet or not, Elena, he's decided you're his to protect. Before I could process that statement, my new phone buzzed. Dante, Tony is waiting downstairs. Don't be nervous about the appointment. Dr. Chen is excellent. I changed into one of the new outfits, dark jeans and a soft gray sweater that actually fit properly, and took the elevator down. Tony waited by the black SUV, opening the door as I approached. The doctor's office was in a medical building near Central Park, the kind of place where the waiting room had fresh flowers and the magazines were current. Dr. Chen was in her 40s, with kind eyes and a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. Mr. Salvatore spoke very highly of you, she said. After the initial examination confirmed what I already knew, I was approximately 8 weeks pregnant. Everything looked normal. He was quite insistent that you receive the best care possible. He called you personally? He did. He also settled your account in full, including all prenatal visits and the delivery. She smiled at whatever expression crossed my face. He clearly cares about your well-being. After the appointment, Tony drove me back to the apartment, but instead of stopping on my floor, the elevator continued to the penthouse. Mr. Salvatore asked if you'd join him for dinner, Tony explained. If you're not too tired. I should have said no. Should have maintained some kind of boundary between us. But I found myself nodding, smoothing down my sweater nervously as the elevator doors opened. Dante stood in his kitchen, actually cooking. He'd changed from whatever he'd worn to his meetings into dark jeans and a black Henley, his hair slightly disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked younger like this, more approachable, though no less dangerous. How did it go? He asked, not looking up from whatever he was stirring on the stove. Good. Dr. Chen is nice. She said everything looks normal. Good. He finally turned to face me, and the intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. Are you hungry? I'm making risotto. You cook? A slight smile. My mother taught me before she died. She said a man who can't feed himself is pathetic. I moved closer, watching him work. His movements were precise, controlled, the same way he did everything else. Did Dr. Chen tell you the details? Or is patient confidentiality a thing? She told me you're healthy, the baby is healthy, and you're due in early June. That's all I needed to know. He added wine to the pan, and the scent made my mouth water despite the lingering nausea. Unless you want to share more. I haven't decided what I'm doing yet, I admitted, about keeping it. I know. He turned down the heat, then moved to the counter where wine glasses waited. He poured one, then hesitated. Water for you? Please. We sat at his dining table overlooking the city, and the risotto was perfect. Creamy and rich without being overwhelming. We ate in comfortable silence for a while before Dante spoke. I need to tell you something. Marcus knows where you are. My fork clattered against my plate. What? How? He went to your apartment looking for you, saw the eviction notice. He called you 17 times on your old phone. Dante's jaw was tight. Tony had someone watching your old building. We knew he'd show up eventually. Why would he be looking for me? My heart hammered. He left me. He doesn't get to... Apparently Jennifer isn't what he remembered. The fantasy didn't match reality, and now he's having regrets. Dante's eyes were hard. He wants to talk to you, to fix things. No. The word came out fierce. He doesn't get to decide he made a mistake and just come back. That's not how this works. I agree. Dante reached across the table, covering my hand with his. The touch sent electricity up my arm. But you should know he's looking. And he's getting desperate. Did you... I hesitated. Did you do anything to him? Not yet. The promise in those 2 words was clear. But if he becomes a problem, I will handle it. I don't want you to hurt him. Even after what he did to you, I pulled my hand back, wrapping my arms around myself. He's still the father of my baby, if I keep it. And he doesn't deserve whatever you did to Sophia's boyfriend. Dante's expression went very still. What did Maria tell you? Enough. I met his eyes. I'm not stupid, Dante. I know what you are. What your family does. The gray areas you mentioned aren't gray at all, are they? No, he said quietly. They're not. So tell me the truth. What happened to the man who abandoned your sister? He stood, moving to the window, his back to me. When he spoke, his voice was flat, emotionless. We found him in Atlantic City. He'd been gambling away money he stole from us. Because of course he'd stolen from us too. We gave him a choice. Marry Sophia posthumously to legitimize the baby, sign over all parental rights, and leave the state, or face consequences he wouldn't walk away from. And he chose to leave. After some persuasion, yes. Dante turned back to me. My nephew will grow up knowing his father was a coward, but at least he'll be legitimate. At least the Salvatore name will protect him. And if he hadn't agreed to your terms? Dante's smile was cold. Then he wouldn't have made it out of Atlantic City. I should have been horrified, should have run from this apartment and this man who could speak so casually about violence. But all I could think about was Sophia, dying alone while the father of her child ran away. I'm not going to apologize for protecting my family, Dante continued, moving closer. Or for removing threats. That's who I am, Elena. I won't lie about it. I know. My voice came out smaller than I intended. And I should be scared of you, but you're not. He stopped in front of me, close enough to touch. Why? Because you've never made me feel unsafe. Even that first night in the park, when you should have terrified me, all I felt was seen. I looked up at him. You see me, Dante. Really see me. Nobody has done that in so long. His hand came up, cupping my face with surprising gentleness. I see everything, Elena. Your strength. Your pain. The way you touch your stomach when you think nobody's watching, like you're already protecting that baby even though you haven't decided if you're keeping it. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. I see a woman who deserves so much better than what life has given her. And you think you can give me better? I know I can. His voice dropped lower, rougher. Let me. The air between us felt electric, charged with something dangerous and inevitable. I could feel my pulse in my throat, could see the way his eyes darkened as they dropped to my lips. This was a bad idea, getting involved with a man like Dante, a man who lived in the shadows, who spoke about violence like it was business, who looked at me like I was something precious and breakable all at once. But I was so tired of being alone. So tired of feeling invisible. Okay, I whispered. Show me better. He kissed me then, and it was nothing like Marcus's kisses had been. This was fire and possession and a hunger that made my knees weak. His hand tangled in my hair while the other wrapped around my waist, pulling me against him until I could feel the heat of his body through our clothes. I kissed him back, pouring months of loneliness and fear and desperate need into it. His answering groan vibrated through me, and when he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. I've wanted to do that since the first night, he admitted, his forehead resting against mine, sitting there looking so lost, and all I could think about was taking away your pain. You can't take it all away. Watch me. And in that moment, with his arms around me and the city lights spread out behind him, I almost believed he could. Almost believed that Dante Salvatore, dangerous, powerful, obsessive Dante, could actually keep me safe from everything that had broken me. I just didn't realize yet that the biggest danger might be falling for him. 2 weeks passed in a blur of doctor's appointments, quiet dinners in Dante's penthouse, and slowly learning to breathe again. He was true to his word about everything. Maria found me a job doing remote copy editing for one of the publishing houses Dante had connections with. Flexible hours, decent pay, work I could do from the apartment. The nausea started to ease as I entered my second trimester, and Dante was everywhere and nowhere all at once. Some nights he'd cook for me, teaching me his mother's recipes while telling stories about growing up in a world I couldn't quite imagine. Other nights he'd disappear for hours, returning with shadows in his eyes and tension in his jaw that told me his business had required his particular brand of attention. I didn't ask questions. Maybe I should have, but I was too comfortable in the cocoon he'd built around me. It was a Thursday afternoon when everything changed. I was working on my laptop in the living room, wrapped in the cashmere throw Dante had bought when he noticed I was always cold, when someone knocked on my door. Not the elevator. The actual apartment door. I checked the peephole and froze. Marcus. He looked terrible. Unshaven, hair unkempt, dark circles under his eyes. Nothing like the polished man who'd left me for his first love. Elena, please. He called through the door. I know you're in there. I just want to talk. My hand hovered over the doorknob. Part of me, the part that had loved him for 5 years, wanted to open it. Wanted to hear what he had to say, but I thought about Dante's warning, about Jennifer not living up to Marcus's fantasy, about him only coming back because his perfect reunion hadn't worked out. Go away, Marcus. Please. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. His voice cracked. I made a mistake, Elena. The biggest mistake of my life. Jennifer and I. It's not what I thought it would be. She's not. You're the one I should have fought for. Something that might have been pain flickered in my chest, but it was distant now, muted, like a bruise that had mostly healed. You don't get to do this, I said through the door. You don't get to leave me with nothing, let me struggle and suffer alone, and then decide you made a mistake when it's convenient for you. I know, God, I know, but please, let me make it right. Let me... The elevator dinged. I turned to see Dante step out, and the expression on his face made my blood run cold. Fury, barely leashed, radiating from him like heat. Tony was right behind him, along with another man I didn't recognize. Younger, with ice-blue eyes and a scar running down his neck. You need to leave, Dante said, his voice soft and deadly. Now. Marcus's eyes widened when he saw Dante, then narrowed when he took in the expensive clothes, the obvious authority, the way I instinctively moved closer to him. Who the hell are you? Marcus demanded. Elena, what's going on? Whose apartment is this? That's none of your concern, Dante said before I could answer. He moved to stand between us, blocking Marcus's view of me. You were told not to contact her. You were told to stay away. Told by who? You? Marcus's voice rose. Elena, is this... Are you with him? Is that why you disappeared? I disappeared because I got evicted, I said, finding my voice. Because you left me with bills I couldn't pay and a life I couldn't afford. I didn't disappear. I survived. By shacking up with some... What, sugar daddy? Is that what this is? Marcus's face twisted with something ugly. God, Elena, I thought you had more self-respect than that. Dante moved so fast I didn't see it coming. One moment he was standing still. The next his hand was wrapped around Marcus's throat, slamming him against the hallway wall with a force that made me gasp. Choose your next words very carefully, Dante said, his voice like ice. Because they might be your last. Dante, don't... I started forward, but Tony caught my arm gently. Let him handle it, Miss Rodriguez. Marcus clawed at Dante's hand, his face reddening. You're insane. I'm protective. Dante leaned in closer. Elena is under my protection. That means you don't call her. You don't come to her apartment. You don't so much as think about her without my permission. Do you understand? She was my wife. Was. Past tense. Dante's grip tightened slightly. You gave up any claim to her when you walked away. When you left her crying and alone and struggling. You made your choice. Now live with it. I'm the father of her baby. Marcus gasped it out, and I felt the world tilt sideways. Dante went very still, his eyes cut to me, questions and something darker swirling in their depths. Elena? I haven't told him, I said quickly. I swear, I haven't told him anything. Then how does he... I saw the test, Marcus choked out. In the bathroom trash, before I left. I knew you were pregnant, Elena. I knew, and I left anyway because I was a coward. But that's my child, and you can't keep me from... Dante released him so abruptly that Marcus stumbled, gasping for air. But the look on Dante's face was somehow more terrifying than the violence had been. Cold calculation. dangerous assessment. You knew, Dante said slowly. You knew she was pregnant when you left her. I panicked. I wasn't ready to be a father. Jennifer and I, we had plans, and a baby would have... Marcus stopped, seeming to realize how that sounded, but I've had time to think, to understand what I gave up. I want to be there for my child, Elena. For both of you. No, my voice came out stronger than I felt. You don't get that, Marcus. You gave up that right when you chose Jennifer over your own baby. I have legal rights. You have nothing. Dante's voice cut through Marcus's protests like a blade. Because if you pursue this, if you try to claim any rights to Elena or that child, I will make your life a living hell. I will destroy your credit, your career, any chance you have at a normal life. You will wish you'd never heard the name Salvatore. Marcus's face went white. You're Dante Salvatore? Oh God. Elena, do you know who he is? What his family does? I know exactly who he is. I moved to stand beside Dante, and his arm immediately came around my waist, possessive, protective. And he's been more of a partner to me in 2 weeks than you were in 5 years. He's a criminal, careful, Tony warned, his hand resting on something beneath his jacket. Marcus swallowed hard, backing toward the elevator. This isn't over. That's my baby, Elena. You can't keep me from my own child. Watch me, Dante said softly. The elevator doors closed on Marcus's pale face, and suddenly the hallway was quiet, except for my ragged breathing. Inside, Dante said, guiding me back into the apartment. Tony and the other man disappeared into the elevator without a word, giving us privacy. I sank onto the couch, my hands trembling. Dante poured me water, then sat beside me, his dark eyes searching my face. You didn't tell him about the pregnancy, he said. It wasn't a question. No. I didn't even know he knew until just now. I pressed my hands against my stomach. He saw the test in the trash before he left. He knew I was pregnant, and he left anyway. Then he has no claim to you or that baby. Dante's voice was hard. None. He's the biological father, Dante. He could fight for custody, take me to court. He won't. The certainty in his voice made me look up. Because if he tries, I'll make sure he regrets it. There are ways to handle this, Elena. Legal ways and other ways. I don't want you to hurt him. Even now? After what he just said to you, how he spoke about you? I was quiet for a moment, thinking about Marcus's words, sugar daddy, self-respect. Like I was something shameful for accepting help when I'd been drowning. I don't love him anymore, I said slowly, realizing it was true. I think I stopped loving him the moment he told me about Jennifer. But I don't want him hurt. I just want him gone. Then he'll be gone. Dante pulled me against him, and I went willingly, pressing my face against his chest. I'll make sure of it. We sat like that for a long time, his hand stroking my hair while my heart rate slowly returned to normal. Finally, I pulled back to look at him. You're not afraid that it's his baby? That I'm carrying another man's child? No. No hesitation. Because that baby is innocent, and if you decide to keep it, then it becomes mine to protect too. All of you become mine. Dante, I know it's fast. I know this is insane. But I meant what I said that first night. I see you, Elena, and what I see is someone I want in my life. Permanently. My breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying that Marcus was right about one thing. You are with me now. Not as a kept woman or some shameful secret, but as someone I... He stopped, jaw working. Someone I care about, deeply. You barely know me. I know enough. His hand came up to cup my face. I know you're strong and resilient and kind, even after life has tried to break you. I know you make me want to be better than the violence and darkness my world requires. I know that when I look at you, I see a future I never thought I'd want. A future that includes another man's baby. A future that includes you. Everything else is just details. He leaned in, his forehead resting against mine. Stay with me, Elena. Not because you have nowhere else to go, but because you want to. Because this, whatever this is between us, is real. I should have said no. Should have pointed out all the reasons this was crazy. The speed, the danger, the fact that I was pregnant with my ex-husband's baby while falling for a man who operated in the shadows. But when Dante kissed me, slow and deep and full of promise, all those logical reasons scattered like leaves in the wind. "Okay," I whispered against his lips. "I'll stay." 6 months later, the nursery was painted a soft sage green with white trim. Sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked Central Park. Dante stood in the doorway, watching me rock our daughter, because she was ours now, legally, and in every way that mattered, while she nursed contentedly. Sofia Rose Salvatore. Named for Dante's sister, and born 3 weeks ago with a full head of dark hair and lungs that could wake the entire building. Marcus had signed away his parental rights 2 months before she was born. Dante's lawyers had been very persuasive, and whatever they'd offered him, or threatened him with, had been enough to make him disappear completely. The birth certificate listed Dante as her father. The adoption papers were already filed. "She's finally settling down," I said softly, as Sophia's eyes started to drift closed. "I think she might actually sleep for more than 20 minutes this time." Dante moved into the room, his expression soft in a way it only ever was with me and the baby. He pressed a kiss to my hair, then to Sophia's forehead, his large hand cradling her tiny head with infinite gentleness. "You're both so beautiful," he murmured. "My girls." I looked up at him. This dangerous man who'd inserted himself into my life when I was at my lowest, who'd built a fortress around me and refused to let me fall, who loved another man's child like she was his own blood. "I love you," I said, meaning it with everything I had. I know I don't say it enough, but I do. Completely. His eyes darkened with emotion. "I loved you from that first night, sitting alone in the cold, looking so lost. I wanted to fix everything for you, wanted to make you mine. You did fix everything. You saved me." "No." He cupped my face with his free hand, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. "You saved yourself, Elena. I just gave you a safe place to land." Sophia made a small sound, completely asleep now, her perfect rosebud mouth slack. I stood carefully, laying her in the crib Dante had assembled himself, refusing to let anyone else touch it, wanting to make sure every bolt was secure. He wrapped his arms around me from behind as we stood watching her sleep, and I leaned back against his solid warmth. "Are you happy?" he asked quietly. Deliriously, I turned in his arms to face him. "I never thought, after everything with Marcus, I never thought I'd find this, find you. You weren't supposed to find me. I was supposed to find you." A slight smile curved his lips. "Best stalking I ever did. Still creepy when you put it that way. You weren't complaining last night when I pressed my hand over his mouth, laughing softly. Sophia is right there." He kissed my palm, then pulled me closer. "Marry me." I froze. "What?" "Marry me, Elena. Make this official. Give Sophia both our names. Let me wake up to you every morning and fall asleep with you every night for the rest of our lives." His eyes searched mine. "Say yes." My heart hammered against my ribs. We'd never talked about marriage, both of us still too aware of how fast we'd moved, how unconventional this all was. But standing in the nursery we'd built together, with our daughter sleeping peacefully nearby and this man who'd become my everything looking at me like I hung the moon, there was only one answer: yes. I reached up to kiss him. "Yes, Dante. I'll marry you." His smile transformed his face, making him look younger, lighter, like some of the darkness he carried had finally eased. He kissed me deeply, pouring everything he felt into it, and I kissed him back with equal fervor. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Sophia let out a tiny snore from her crib. Dante laughed. Actually laughed, the sound rare and precious. Our daughter has impeccable timing. Our daughter. I tested the words, loving how they felt. I like the sound of that. Good. Because you're both stuck with me now. He pulled me toward the door, his hand warm in mine. "Let her sleep. I want to show you the ring I've been hiding for the last month, waiting for the right moment to ask." "A month? You've been planning this?" "I've been planning this since the moment you said you'd stay." He led me to our bedroom. The penthouse had become home for all of us, and pulled a small velvet box from his nightstand drawer. The ring inside took my breath away. A simple platinum band with a princess-cut diamond, elegant and timeless. Nothing flashy. Nothing that screamed wealth, just beautiful. It was my mother's, Dante said quietly. The only thing of hers I kept. I want you to have it. Tears pricked my eyes as he slid it onto my finger. A perfect fit, like it had been made for me. I promise I'll take care of you, he continued, his voice rough with emotion. Both of you. For the rest of my life. You'll never be alone or scared or invisible again. You'll never doubt that you're loved, that you matter, that you're the most important thing in my world. I know. I cupped his face, this beautiful, dangerous man who'd saved me in every way that mattered. I've known since that first night when you told me I was stronger than I thought. You saw me, Dante, really saw me, and you've been seeing me every day since. He kissed me again, and this time there was no interruption. This time we had all the time in the world. Later, as we lay tangled together in sheets that smelled like us, like home, I thought about everything that had led me here. The divorce that had shattered me, the pregnancy that had terrified me, the night I'd sat alone on a bench, clutching a pregnancy test and feeling like my life was over. But it hadn't been an ending, it had been a beginning. The beginning of finding myself, of learning I was stronger than I'd ever imagined, of meeting a man who saw past my brokenness to the person I could become. Dante's arm tightened around me, even in sleep, and I pressed my hand against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong beneath my palm. I'd been divorced for his first love, thrown away and left to drown. But I'd been found by a mafia boss who made me his world, and that made all the difference.